Jake Martinez stood at the observation window of his small quarters on Epsilon Prime, watching the stars drift by. He had been stationed at this trading post for 2 years now, working as a human diplomatic envoy. It was not glamorous work, but it was important. Humans were still new to the galaxy, and every interaction mattered. His communication device beeped. Jake turned and picked it up from his desk. The message that appeared on the screen made his blood run cold. It was an official summons from the Valorian Empire. He was ordered to appear before Queen Vastara herself within 3 days. Jake sat down heavily. He knew why they were calling him. His secret was out. 3 years ago, everything had been different. Jake had been sent to a Valorian colony world called Helsin 4. The planet was under attack by pirates, and the Valorian military was too far away to help in time. Jake and 12 other humans were the only ones close enough to respond. That was where he met Princess Lyra. She had been visiting the colony when the attack began, and she refused to evacuate while her people were in danger. Jake admired that immediately. Most royals he had heard about would have fled at the first sign of trouble. For 8 days, Jake and his small team fought alongside the Valorian defenders. They held off the pirates using human weapons and tactics. The Valorians were strong and tough, but they fought in predictable ways. The pirates expected that. They did not expect humans to be so creative and stubborn. Princess Lyra fought beside them. She was amazing in battle, but what impressed Jake more was how she treated the civilians. She helped the wounded. She comforted the scared. She worked alongside common soldiers without a hint of superiority. When the Valorian fleet finally arrived and drove off the pirates, Lyra sought Jake out. She wanted to thank him personally. They talked for hours. She asked him questions about Earth, about human culture, about how humans thought. She was genuinely curious, not just polite. That conversation led to more conversations. When Lyra's duties brought her back to that region of space, she would find excuses to visit Epsilon Prime. Jake would meet her on neutral ground, away from prying eyes. Their friendship grew into something deeper. Lyra told him things she could never tell her own people. She hated the rigid traditions of the Valorian Empire. She hated how marriages were arranged for political gain. How individuals did not matter. Only power and dynasty. She wanted to reform her society, but she was just one voice against centuries of tradition. Jake fell in love with her passion, her intelligence, and her kindness. She fell in love with his determination and his simple honesty. Where Valorian culture valued grand gestures and complex honor codes, Jake was straightforward. He said what he meant and meant what he said. They kept their relationship secret for a year. Then, Lyra discovered she was pregnant. Valorian human hybrids were not unheard of, but they were rare. The genetics were barely compatible. But somehow, against all odds, it had happened. They knew they had to make a choice. They could not hide a child. Lyra suggested they marry in secret, using human customs. At least then, in human law, their child would be legitimate. Jake's friend Amy Chen served as their only witness in a quiet ceremony on a remote station. That was 6 months ago. Their son had been born 2 months ago. They named him Kael, a name that worked in both Valorian and human languages. Lyra kept him hidden in a secure location, telling her family she was dealing with sensitive diplomatic matters. But secrets could not last forever. Especially in royal families. Someone had talked, or someone had investigated, or someone had simply put the pieces together. Now the queen knew, and she was summoning Jake to the throne world. Jake sent a message to Amy Chen. She arrived at his quarters within an hour. Amy was short and stocky, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been Jake's friend since their academy days on Earth. "You got one too?" Amy asked as she entered. Jake nodded. "You are coming with me?" Of course. I was your witness. I am not letting you face this alone." Amy paused. "Jake, you know what this means. The Valorians do not summon people just to talk. The Queen is going to make an example of you. I know. You could run. Take Lyra and the baby and disappear into human space. Jake shook his head. That is no life for them. Always hiding, always looking over their shoulders. And Lyra would never abandon her people, even if they reject her. She wants to make things better. Running away does not achieve that. So you are just going to walk into the lion's den? I do not have a choice, Amy. If I run, I prove everything they think about humans. That we are cowards. That we are not worthy. If I face the Queen, at least I have a chance to show her that I am serious about Lyra. That I love her. Reported. Amy sat down and rubbed her face. Love does not mean much to the Valorians. They care about power and bloodlines and tradition. Maybe. But Lyra fell in love with me because I am different from what she knew. Maybe I can make the Queen understand that. And if you cannot? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then at least I tried. At least Cale will know that his father did not back down. They spent the next day preparing. Jake reviewed everything he knew about Valorian royal protocol. He practiced what he would say. Amy kept trying to convince him to prepare defensive arguments, political strategies, ways to negotiate. But Jake knew none of that would work. The Queen did not care about clever arguments. She cared about strength and respect. And the only way to earn her respect was to stand firm in the face of her power. The transport ship that arrived to collect them was a Valorian military vessel. It was sleek and dangerous-looking, covered in the crystalline armor that made Valorian ships so tough. The pilot was a young Valorian officer named Kesh. His skin was pale blue, which Jake knew meant he was nervous. Sir, Kesh said quietly as Jake boarded, I am supposed to escort you to the throne world. I am ordered to make sure you arrive safely. Thank you, Jake said. Kesh hesitated. Sir, I served under Lieutenant Vara on Helsin 4. She told me what you did there. What you and your people did. I just want you to know that not all Valorians think poorly of humans. Jake smiled. I appreciate that. The journey to the Valorian throne world took 2 days. As they approached, Jake saw the massive defense fleet surrounding the planet. There were hundreds of warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. It was a show of force, a reminder of Valorian power. The planet itself was beautiful. It had rings of crystal that caught the light of its sun and scattered it into rainbows. Cities glowed on the surface, built from the same living crystal that made up Valorian skin. Kesh brought the ship down to a landing pad near the royal palace. The palace was enormous, a mountain of crystal towers that reached toward the sky. Guards were waiting for them, tall and imposing in their ceremonial armor. This is as far as I can go, Kesh said. Good luck, human. I hope the Queen sees what Lieutenant Vara saw in you. Jake and Amy were escorted through the palace halls. Other Valorians stared at them as they passed. Some looked curious. Most looked hostile. Humans were not welcome here. Finally, they reached a massive set of doors. The guards stopped them. Only the one summoned may enter. One guard said, looking at Amy. Amy 4. End quote. I am his legal counsel, Amy protested. The Queen will decide who may speak. The guard replied. Wait here. Amy grabbed Jake's arm. Remember, you do not have to bow. Make them respect you. Jake nodded. He took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and walked forward as the doors opened. The throne room was beyond anything Jake had imagined. It stretched for hundreds of feet, with columns of living crystal rising to a ceiling lost in shadows. Thousands of Valorian nobles lined the walls, their skin flickering with colors Jake could not interpret. At the far end, elevated on a platform that required climbing 100 steps, sat Queen Vastara. She was magnificent and terrifying. Her skin burned with deep purple light, and her crown seemed to hold captured starlight. When she looked at Jake, he felt the weight of 3 centuries of rule in that gaze. Jake began walking forward, Every step echoed in the silent chamber. He knew what he was supposed to do. Every other species that entered this room bowed. It was law. It was tradition. But Jake did not bow. He walked steadily forward until he reached the base of the steps. Then he stopped and looked up at the Queen with steady, calm eyes. The throne room erupted in shocked gasps and angry shouts. But Jake kept his eyes on the Queen. This was only the beginning. The angry voices of the Valorian nobles filled the throne room like thunder. They shouted for Jake's immediate execution. Some demanded he be thrown into the dungeons. Others called for him to be expelled from Valorian space forever. But through it all, Jake stood perfectly still. His eyes fixed on the Queen. Queen Vestara raised one hand. The gesture was small, but the effect was immediate. Every voice fell silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the crystal columns around them. The Queen stood slowly from her throne. She was even taller than Jake had expected. Easily 8 feet in height, her body seemed to glow with inner light, and her skin shifted from purple to a deeper, more dangerous red. "Human," she said. Her voice resonated through the chamber like the rumble of distant thunder. "You stand before me as though you are my equal. You, whose species crawled out of its own solar system barely 50 years ago. You, whose entire lifespan is shorter than some of my meetings. You dare to look upon me without showing proper respect." Jake kept his voice steady. "With respect, Your Majesty, I am showing you the greatest respect I know how. I am showing you honesty. I am showing you that I am not afraid." "Not afraid?" The Queen's laugh was cold. "Perhaps you are simply ignorant of how much danger you are in." "I understand the danger perfectly," Jake replied. "But fear will not help me here. The truth is all I have." The Queen descended the steps slowly. Each footfall echoed like a judgment. When she reached the bottom, she stood directly before Jake, towering over him. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns in her crystalline skin. The way light seemed to flow through her like water. "Then let us speak truth," the Queen said. "Explain to me why my daughter, Princess Lyra, heir to 17 star systems, calls you her husband." Jake met her gaze without flinching. "Because I love her. And she loves me. And that is reason enough." The simplicity of his answer seemed to catch the Queen off guard. Her skin flickered, colors shifting rapidly. Then the red deepened, burning brighter. "Love," she said, and the word dripped with contempt. "You dare speak to me of love? My daughter has obligations. She has responsibilities to her people, to her empire, to her bloodline. She was meant to marry Prince Zarek of the Northern clans, uniting 2 of the most powerful houses in our empire. Instead, she threw away everything for you. A human, a creature who will be dust and bones before she has even reached her prime." "I cannot give her centuries of life," Jake admitted. "But I can give her something your arranged marriage never could. I can give her a choice. I can give her happiness. I can give her a partner who sees her as a person, not a political tool. Happiness." The Queen's voice rose. "What does happiness matter when an empire is at stake? What does one person's feelings matter against the stability of billions?" "It matters to her," Jake said quietly. "It matters to me. And it will matter to our son." The mention of the child made the Queen's skin flash bright orange, the color of shock. The nobles around the room erupted in whispers. Many had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. "A child," the Queen said slowly. "You have created a half-breed child with my daughter. Do you understand what you have done? That child will be rejected by both our people. Too human for the Valorians, too alien for the humans. You have condemned an innocent life to suffering." "No," Jake said, and his voice grew firmer. "We have given that child something special. He will have 2 cultures, 2 perspectives, Two ways of seeing the universe. He will be stronger for it, not weaker. And if people reject him, then those people are the ones who are wrong, not him. The queen stared at him. Her skin was cycling through colors so rapidly now that it was hard to follow. Purple, red, orange, even flickers of green that Jake did not recognize. You humans, she said finally. You are famous across the galaxy for your arrogance. You stumble into civilizations that are thousands of years older than yours, and you act as though you belong among us. But what truly offends me about your kind is not your arrogance. It is your weakness. You are fragile. You die in the blink of an eye. You are small and soft. How can you possibly believe you are worthy of my daughter? Jake took a breath. He had been expecting this. You are right. We are fragile. We are short-lived. We are small compared to your people. I will not argue with facts. The queen's eyes narrowed. Then, you admit you are unworthy. I admit that I am different, Jake corrected. But different does not mean unworthy. Yes, we are weak in some ways, but we are also strong in ways your people are not. Such as? The queen's voice was dangerous now. We are stubborn. We do not give up, even when logic says we should. We adapt. We find solutions where others see only problems. When your daughter's colony was under attack, your own military command said reinforcements would take 6 days to arrive. But the pirates would have overrun the colony in 3 days. Everyone knew it was hopeless. Jake's voice grew stronger. I and 12 other humans held that colony for 8 days. We did it with weapons that were inferior to yours. We did it with no backup. We did it because we do not accept that some things are impossible. We saved 4,000 Valorian lives that day, including your daughters. One act of competence does not make you worthy of a princess, the queen snapped. Perhaps not, Jake agreed. But it made your daughter see us differently. She saw that strength comes in many forms. She saw that the length of a life does not determine its value, and when she looked at me, she did not see a weak human. She saw someone who would stand beside her, not above her. Someone who would respect her choices. Someone who would love her for who she is, not what she represents. The queen was silent for a long moment. Her skin had settled into a deep blue color that Jake did not recognize. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but no less intense. Do you understand what you are asking? If I accept this marriage, I set a precedent. Other young Valorians might think they too can marry whoever they choose. The entire foundation of our alliance system could collapse. Bloodlines that have been carefully managed for centuries could be diluted. I am not just a mother. I am a queen. I must think of the empire. 2. And Lyra is not just a princess, Jake replied. She is a person. She has dreams and hopes and fears, just like anyone else. Yes, she has responsibilities, but does that mean she has no rights? Does her duty erase her right to choose who she loves? In my empire, duty comes before personal desire, the queen said. And that is why your empire has so many problems, Jake said, and several nobles gasped at his boldness. Lyra has told me about your empire, about how your people are afraid to innovate because it might break tradition, about how talented individuals are ignored because they were not born into the right families, about how you are so focused on maintaining what you have that you cannot grow into what you could be. The queen's skin flashed back to angry red. You dare criticize my empire? I dare to love someone who wants to make it better, Jake said. And I dare to believe that she can. Lyra is brilliant. She is compassionate. She is exactly the kind of leader your people need. But she needs the freedom to be herself. If you force her into a loveless political marriage, you will break her spirit. And that would be a loss not just for her, but for everyone. Before the queen could respond, the massive doors to the throne room burst open. Guards moved to block whoever was entering, but a commanding voice rang out. Stand aside. I am Princess Lyra, and I will speak to my mother." Jake turned to see Lyra striding into the throne room. She was as beautiful as he remembered, her crystalline skin glowing with gold, the color of protective fury. In her arms, she carried a small bundle wrapped in soft cloth. The guards looked to the queen, unsure what to do. The queen's expression was unreadable as she watched her daughter approach. Lyra walked straight to Jake's side. She did not bow either. Instead, she looked at her mother with the same steady gaze that Jake had shown. "Mother," Lyra said, "you summoned my husband here to humiliate him, to break him, to force him to abandon me and our child. But you have failed to understand what I have learned about humans." She shifted the bundle so the queen could see the baby's face. Little Kale was awake, his eyes wide and curious. He had his mother's crystalline skin, but in softer shades. He had his father's dark hair. He was perfect. "Humans do not break easily," Lyra continued. "They bend, but they do not snap. They adapt to impossible situations. They endure when others would give up. And this human, my husband, is the strongest man I have ever known. Not because of his physical power, but because of his character." She moved closer to the queen. "You taught me to value strength, Mother. You taught me to respect those who face adversity without cowering. Look at him. He stands before you, before your entire court, knowing he could be executed at your word. And he does not beg. He does not grovel. He simply tells the truth and accepts the consequences. If that is not strength, then I do not know what is." The queen looked at her daughter, at Jake, and at the hybrid child. Her skin was cycling through colors again, moving too fast to interpret. The entire throne room held its breath. Finally, the queen spoke. "You ask me to accept this marriage, to welcome this human into our family, to recognize this child as my grandchild and a legitimate heir." "I do," Lyra said firmly. "And if I refuse, if I order him expelled from Valorian space, if I command you to give up this foolishness?" Lyra's voice did not waver. "Then you will lose your daughter. Because where he goes, I go. Where I go, your grandchild goes. And you will lose any chance of influencing what kind of person that child becomes." The silence that followed was absolute. No one had ever given the queen an ultimatum before. It was unthinkable. But Lyra stood her ground. Jake beside her, united against the full weight of the empire. The queen closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had changed in her expression. Queen Vastara reached out slowly and touched the baby's cheek with one long finger. Kyle looked up at his grandmother without fear, making a soft cooing sound. The queen's skin flickered between several colors before settling on a pale green. "He has your eyes, Lyra," the queen said quietly. Then she looked at Jake. "And your stubbornness, I suspect." She stepped back and straightened to her full height. When she spoke again, her voice carried throughout the throne room with absolute authority. "You claim to love my daughter, human. You claim that your human qualities make you worthy of her. You speak of strength and adaptation and endurance. Very well. I will test these claims." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the throne room, floating in the air above the crowd. It showed a star map with 3 planets highlighted in red. "The Karoth swarm has invaded the Terran system," the queen announced. 3 colony worlds. 2 million Valorian citizens live there. Our main fleet is engaged in the border wars with the Kresh Confederation. Our nearest battle group is 4 weeks away. Military command estimates the colonies will fall within 10 days. Man. She turned her penetrating gaze to Jake. "You say humans are stubborn, that you endure when others cannot. Then prove it. I will give you access to whatever human forces you can gather. Save those 3 worlds, and I will accept your marriage to my daughter. I will legitimize your child as a royal heir with all the rights and privileges that entails. I will even formally welcome you into this family." Jake felt the weight of every eye in the room on him. He looked at the star map, at the 3 red planets. The Karath were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. They were insectoid swarm warriors, each one fearless and willing to die for the collective. They fought with overwhelming numbers and suicidal tactics. They did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. "And if I fail?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "If you fail, you will leave Valorian space forever. You will never see your wife or child again. You will return to human space and accept that you were not worthy of what you tried to claim." Lyra gripped Jake's arm. "No. Mother. This is not fair. You are asking him to do the impossible. You are setting him up to fail. Khan, I am giving him the same test I would give any Valorian warrior who claimed to be worthy of royal blood," the Queen replied. "If he truly has the strength and courage he claims, he will find a way. If not, then he proves me right." Jake looked at Lyra. Her golden skin had taken on hints of red, anger, mixing with her protective instincts. She was ready to fight her mother, to argue, to refuse. But Jake knew that would not help. The Queen had made her challenge. It was clever, he had to admit. If he refused, he looked like a coward. If he accepted and failed, he proved he was not worthy. The Queen had given him an impossible task, but impossible was what humans did best. "I accept your challenge," Jake said clearly. Lyra turned to him. "Jake, no, you cannot." "Maybe," Jake said softly. "But if I do not try, we lose anyway. At least this way, we have a chance." "A chance?" Lyra's voice cracked. "What chance? What human forces can you possibly gather in time? Your species has a few scout ships and trading vessels in this sector. Nothing that could face a Karath invasion." Jake smiled at her, trying to show confidence he did not quite feel. "Then, I will have to be creative." The Queen watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. "The human has accepted. Princess Lyra, you and the child will remain here on the throne world. If your husband succeeds, you will be reunited. If he fails, you will honor my decision and marry Prince Zarek, as originally planned." "You cannot separate us," Lyra protested. "I can, and I will. This is my compromise, daughter. I am giving the human a chance to prove himself, which is more than most in this room think he deserves. But I will not risk you or the child in whatever desperate plan he attempts. You will remain here, under my protection." Jake knew there was no point in arguing. The Queen had made her decision. He turned to Lyra and gently took her hands in his. "I will come back," he promised. "I swore to spend every day of my life making you happy. I keep my promises. I will come back. I keep my promises." "Jake," Lyra whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "Please do not do this. There is no other way. Not one where we can truly be happy. Not one where KL grows up free." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, then looked down at their son. "Take care of him. Tell him about me. Tell him that his father loves him. You will tell him yourself when you return," Lyra said fiercely. Jake smiled. The Queen gestured to her guards. "Escort Princess Lyra to her chambers. The human will be given 12 hours to prepare before he departs." 2 guards moved forward. Lyra resisted for a moment, but Jake gently squeezed her hands and nodded. She finally let herself be led away, looking back at Jake until she disappeared through a side door. The Queen approached Jake again. Her skin had settled into a neutral blue-gray color. "You may think me cruel, human. Perhaps I am. But I am also a ruler of a vast empire. I cannot allow emotion to dictate policy. If you somehow succeed in this task, you will have proven that humans have value beyond what I currently believe. That would be worth knowing." 1. And if I fail? Then my daughter will mourn, but she will recover. She is strong. She will do her duty. And your child will be raised as a Valorian, taught to be ashamed of his human half. The casual cruelty of that statement hit Jake harder than any insult. You would do that to your own grandchild? I would do what is necessary to maintain order and stability, the Queen replied. That is what it means to rule. Now go. Prepare. You have 10 days to save 2 million lives. Jake was escorted out of the throne room by guards. Outside, Amy was waiting, pacing nervously. What happened? She demanded as soon as she saw him. Jake quickly explained the situation as they were led to a transport pad. Amy's face grew more concerned with every word. 10 days to save 3 worlds from the Karath with no real military support? Amy said once they were alone on the transport. Jake, this is insane. The Queen set you up to fail. I know. Then why did you accept? Because refusing was not an option. And because impossible odds are what make humans dangerous. Jake looked out the viewport at the stars. We need to get to the Defiant. We need to contact every human ship in the sector. And we need to think like humans, not like Valorians. What does that mean? It means we are not going to try to fight the Karath head-on. That would be suicide. We are going to do what humans do best. We are going to improvise. We are going to adapt, and we are going to survive. The journey back to their ship took 3 hours. During that time, Jake was already making plans. He sent messages to every human vessel within range. He contacted traders, scientists, miners, and explorers. He explained the situation and asked for volunteers. By the time they reached the Defiant, a small human frigate that served as Jake's transport, he had responses. Not many, but some. A mining ship called the Ironside agreed to help. 2 survey vessels, the Pioneer and the Explorer. A trading ship named Lucky Break. And 3 private yachts, owned by wealthy human adventurers. It was not a fleet. It was barely a squadron, but it was what they had. Jake gathered his small team on the Defiance Bridge. Besides Amy, there was Kyle Harris, a human engineer who had worked on colony construction projects. There was Lisa Grant, a former Earth military pilot who now flew cargo runs. There was Danny Park, a communications specialist. And there was Maria Santos, a doctor who had volunteered despite having no combat experience. All right, Jake said, looking at the star map showing the Terran system. Let us talk about what we are facing. The Karath swarm invaded 6 days ago. They have overwhelmed the local defense forces. There are 3 colonies in this system, and each one has between 500,000 and 1 million Valorian civilians. How many Karath? Kyle asked. Reports say at least 50,000 warriors, maybe more. They arrived in 20 transport ships escorted by a nest ship. The nest ship is their command center. It coordinates all Karath actions in the system. Lisa whistled. 50,000 against what? Us and a few civilian ships? Jake, we will be slaughtered. Only if we fight them directly, Jake replied. But we are not going to do that. Then, what are we going to do? Danny asked. Jake smiled. We are going to use the one advantage we have. The Karath are predictable. They follow the commands from the nest ship without question. They swarm and overwhelm through sheer numbers. They do not adapt well to changing situations. But humans, we are chaos. We are unpredictable. We improvise. He pointed to the map. Here is my plan. We split into teams. Each team takes 1 colony world. We do not try to fight the Karath in open battle. Instead, we organize the civilians. We teach them guerrilla tactics. We use the terrain. We set traps. We make the Karath pay for every meter they advance. That might buy time, but it will not stop them, Amy pointed out. You are right. That is why the real target is not the Karath warriors. It is the nest ship. If we can disable or destroy it, the swarm loses coordination. They will start fighting among themselves. They will become disorganized. And disorganized Karoth can be handled by local forces once Valorian reinforcements arrive. Kyle leaned forward. How do we destroy a nest ship? Those things are massive and heavily armored. We do not destroy it, Jake said. We cripple it. I have been reviewing the system data. There is an asteroid mining station in orbit around the fourth planet. It has a fusion reactor that powers the mining equipment. If we could overload that reactor and position the nest ship nearby, the explosion would disable its systems. That is a big if, Maria said quietly. How do we get the nest ship into position? We lure it, Jake replied. We make it think we are a threat worth investigating. We make it chase us. And then we trigger the explosion. The team was quiet, each person thinking through the plan. It was risky. It depended on timing and luck, and the Karoth behaving exactly as predicted. But it was a plan, which was more than they had 5 minutes ago. All right, Lisa said finally. I am in. This is crazy, but crazy is better than hopeless. One by one, the others nodded their agreement. Jake felt a surge of pride and fear. These people were trusting him with their lives. He could not let them down. We have 9 days, Jake said. Let us get to work. The journey to the Terran system took 1 full day at maximum speed. During that time, Jake and his team prepared everything they could. They studied maps of the 3 colony worlds. They reviewed Karoth tactics from previous encounters. They planned escape routes and fallback positions. When they arrived at the edge of the Terran system, the situation was even worse than the reports suggested. Through their sensors, they could see massive Karoth transport ships in orbit around all 3 colonies. Smoke rose from dozens of cities. Distress signals cluttered every communication frequency. They are hitting all 3 worlds simultaneously, Danny said from his communications station. The colonies are trying to coordinate their defense, but the Karoth are adapting to every strategy. Jake studied the tactical display. The largest colony, Terran Prime, was holding out better than the other 2. It had stronger walls and better defensive positions, but it was also where the Karoth were concentrating their forces. The other 2 colonies, Terran 2 and Terran 3, were smaller and more vulnerable. Change of plans, Jake announced. Amy, you take the Pioneer and the Explorer to Terran 2. Lisa, you and the Lucky Break handle Terran 3. I will take the Defiant to Terran Prime along with the Ironside. Kyle, you are with me. Maria, you go with Amy. Danny, you stay on the Defiant. What about the nest ship? Kyle asked. Once we get the civilians organized and buy some time, we focus on that. But first, we need to make sure there are people left to save. They split up, each group heading toward their assigned planet. Jake took the Defiant in fast, using the chaos of the battle to slip past the Karoth ships in orbit. He landed on the outskirts of the main city on Terran Prime, in a district that was still under Valorian control. The local defense commander, a grizzled Valorian warrior named Commander Vaughn, met them at the landing pad. His crystalline skin was scarred and gray with exhaustion. You are the human help the Queen promised, Vaughn said, looking at Jake's small crew with obvious disappointment. 5 people and 2 ships? We are not here to fight your battles for you, Jake replied. We are here to teach you how to fight smarter. How many defenders do you have? 3,000 soldiers. Maybe 5,000 armed civilians. We are holding the inner city, but the Karoth push closer every day. We cannot keep this up much longer. Show me your defensive positions. Vaughn led them through the city. It was a typical Valorian colony, built with beautiful crystal architecture that caught the light. But beauty was not helpful in war. The buildings were too spread out, too exposed. The Valorians had built walls, but they were trying to defend too much territory. You are stretched too thin, Jake said. You are trying to hold the entire city. These buildings took decades to construct. We cannot just abandon them. You can rebuild buildings. You cannot rebuild people. Jake pointed to the map. Pull back to the government district. Those buildings are taller and closer together. We can create choke points. We can funnel the Karoth into kill zones. Retreat? Vaughn looked offended. Valorians do not retreat. Valorians die when they are too proud to adapt. Jake shot back. Do you want to save your people? Or protect your pride? Vaughn's skin flashed angry red, but he did not argue. He was too tired and too desperate. What do you need? Over the next 3 days, Jake worked with Vaughn to completely reorganize the defense. They collapsed their perimeter, abandoning the outer city and concentrating forces in a smaller area. They rigged buildings with explosives that could be triggered remotely. They set up sniper positions on rooftops. They dug trenches and created mazes of barriers that forced the Karoth to take predictable paths. Kyle used his engineering knowledge to modify mining equipment into weapons. They turned industrial cutters into flamethrowers. They reprogrammed construction drones to carry explosives. They rigged elevators to become traps. Most importantly, Jake taught the Valorian civilians how to fight in ways their military never had. Valorian warriors were trained for honorable combat, for face-to-face battles, but there was no honor in being killed by an enemy that did not care about honor. Jake taught them hit-and-run tactics. He showed them how to use the terrain. He explained the concept of guerrilla warfare. Fight from the shadows. Strike and retreat. Make the enemy afraid of every corner. The Valorians were resistant at first. This was not how they fought. This was not glorious. But when Jake led the first raid himself, sneaking into a Karoth position at night and destroying their supply depot without losing a single person, they began to understand. Meanwhile, Amy and Lisa were having similar success on the other 2 colonies. Amy organized the civilians, on Terran 2, into neighborhood defense teams. Lisa turned an entire industrial sector on Terran 3 into a fortified maze that the Karoth could not penetrate without taking heavy losses. The Karoth were confused. They were used to overwhelming opponents through sheer numbers. But these tactics slowed them down. Every street they took cost them warriors. Every building they entered might be a trap. The colonies were not falling as quickly as expected, but Jake knew this was only buying time. The Karoth were still winning. They had far more numbers. Eventually, they would adapt or simply overwhelm through attrition. The real battle was still ahead. On the 6th day, Jake gathered his team for a virtual meeting across all 3 worlds. Status report, he said. Amy appeared on the holographic display. Terran 2 is holding. We have lost the outer settlements, but the main city is secure. The Karoth are getting more cautious. They know we are setting traps. Lisa was next. Terran 3 is similar. We are bleeding them slowly. But Jake, we are running out of ammunition and supplies. We cannot hold much longer. Terran Prime is stable for now, Jake reported. But the Karoth are bringing in reinforcements. They are adapting to our tactics. We need to execute the main plan now. Kyle had been working on the details. The asteroid mining station is still operational. I can reach it with the Ironside, but I will need at least 12 hours to rig the reactor to overload. And I will need the nest ship to be within 5 kilometers of the explosion to guarantee enough damage. How do we get the nest ship that close? Danny asked. Jake had been thinking about this problem for days. We make ourselves important. Right now, the Karoth think we are just annoying. We need to become a threat. We need to make them think we have something that could turn the tide of the battle. Like what? Maria asked. Like a weapon. A secret weapon that could destroy their entire invasion force. Jake smiled grimly. We are going to send out a fake distress signal. We are going to make it look like we are transporting a powerful bomb to Terran Prime. Something that could take out all the Karoth in the system. But we do not have such a weapon. Lisa pointed out. The Karath do not know that. They intercept our communications all the time. We make sure they overhear the right conversation. We make them believe the weapon is real. The weapon 2000 signed. We have not know that are Repin 2005s. We have presentment from Irely Repin 2000s. We have not minute a Repin 2000s. And then we lead them on a chase toward the asteroid station. It was a desperate plan built on deception and timing. But it was all they had. Kyle took the Ironside to the asteroid station immediately. The station was abandoned, its crew having evacuated when the Karath arrived. He and 2 other engineers started working on the reactor, carefully adjusting its safety systems to allow a controlled overload. Meanwhile, Jake prepared the Defiant for what would essentially be a suicide run. They stripped out everything unnecessary to make the ship faster. They reinforced the engines for maximum speed. They loaded every decoy and countermeasure they had. On the 8th day, everything was ready. Kyle reported that the reactor would be ready to blow in 2 hours. The asteroid station was positioned perfectly in its orbit. Now, they just needed the nest ship. Jake had Danny send out the fake transmission. It was coded but not too well coded. The Karath would be able to break it within minutes. The message talked about a prototype weapon being transported on the Defiant, something called a quantum cascade device that could create a chain reaction destroying all Karath biological matter in the system. The weapon did not exist. Jake had made up the name from old science fiction he had read as a kid, but it sounded impressive. And the Karath did not know enough about human technology to realize it was fake. Jake took the Defiant out of Terran Prime's atmosphere, moving slowly as if they were trying to be stealthy. He set a course that would take them near the asteroid station, but made it look like they were trying to reach open space. For an hour, nothing happened. Jake started to worry that the Karath had not taken the bait. Then, Danny looked up from his console, his face pale. Contact. The nest ship just changed course. It is moving to intercept us. Jake felt his heart rate increase. Fast. They really want us. They are abandoning their position over Terran Prime. Good. That is exactly what we want. Get me Kyle on the comm. Kyle's face appeared on the screen. I see the nest ship on sensors. You actually got it to chase you. I am impressed and terrified. How long until the reactor is ready? 90 minutes. Can you stay ahead of them that long? Jake looked at the tactical display. The nest ship was huge and heavily armed, but it was not built for speed. The Defiant was smaller and faster. I can do 80 minutes. You will have to work fast on the last 10. Understood. Good luck, Jake. The chase began. Jake pushed the Defiant to maximum speed, but he could not go too fast, or the nest ship might give up. He needed to stay just ahead, close enough to seem catchable, but far enough to stay alive. The nest ship fired at them several times. Jake dodged and weaved, using every trick he knew. A shot clipped their rear shields, making the ship shudder. Shields at 60%, Danny reported. Keep going, Jake ordered. They led the nest ship on a winding path through the system, always gradually moving toward the asteroid station. The Karath ship followed relentlessly, convinced they were about to capture a weapon that could end their invasion. After 70 minutes, they were close. Jake could see the asteroid station on his screens, a small cluster of buildings and equipment attached to a massive rock. Kyle. Status? Jake called out as the Defiant raced toward the asteroid station. The reactor is primed. I am making final adjustments now. Give me 5 more minutes. Jake checked the distance to the nest ship. It was gaining on them. I can give you 4. Another blast hit their shields. The ship shook violently. Warning, alarms blared across the bridge. Shields at 30%, Danny reported. 1 more hit like that, and we are done. Jake pushed the engines harder. The Defiant was not built for this kind of stress. He could hear metal groaning under the strain. But they were so close. The asteroid station was directly ahead now. 3 minutes, Jake announced. I am working as fast as I can, Kyle replied, his voice tense. The nest ship fired again. Jake jerked the controls hard to the right. The blast missed by meters. but the evasive maneuver slowed them down. The nest ship was getting closer. "Jake, they are locking weapons," Danny warned. "Multiple targeting systems active. They are not going to miss next time." Jake's mind raced. They needed more time. But if the Defiant stayed on this course, they would be destroyed before Kyle finished his work. He had to make a choice. "Danny, drop every decoy we have. Make it look like we are launching the weapon. Make them think the bomb is in space." Danny understood immediately. His fingers flew across the controls. The Defiant released a dozen metallic spheres, each one broadcasting the same energy signature as their ship. To sensors, it would look like they had launched something important. The nest ship hesitated for just a moment, probably trying to determine which signal was the real target. That moment was all Jake needed. "Kyle, now!" Jake shouted. "Reactor overloading," Kyle confirmed. "I am getting off this station. 30 seconds to detonation." Jake saw the Ironside detach from the asteroid station and boost away at full speed. At the same moment, he pulled the Defiant into the tightest turn the ship could handle. They needed to get clear of the blast radius. The nest ship, realizing it had been tricked, tried to change course, but something that large could not turn quickly. It was still moving toward the asteroid station when the reactor exploded. The blast was enormous. The fusion reactor released all its energy in a single instant, turning the asteroid into a small, temporary star. The shockwave expanded outward at incredible speed. The nest ship was caught in the edge of the explosion. Jake watched on his screens as the blast tore into the ship's hull. Armor plating shattered. Systems overloaded. The massive vessel went dark, all its lights and engines failing at once. The shockwave hit the Defiant a moment later. Even at their distance, the force was tremendous. Jake felt like a giant hand had swatted them. Alarms screamed. Several consoles exploded in showers of sparks. The ship tumbled out of control. "I lost helm control," Jake shouted over the noise. "Danny, damage report. Systems failing everywhere. Main power is down. Life support is on backup. But we are alive." Jake let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "Kyle, you there?" "Still here," Kyle replied. "The Ironside took some damage, but nothing critical." "That was too close." "Closer than I planned," Jake admitted. He managed to stabilize the Defiant using maneuvering thrusters. "Now let us see if it worked." Ground. Ground. They watched the sensor displays as the nest ship drifted, powerless. Then, something changed. On the 3 colony worlds, the Karath warriors began behaving erratically. Without the nest ship's coordination, they lost their unified purpose. Some groups continued attacking. Others stopped and seemed confused. A few groups even began fighting each other. "It is working," Danny said with amazement. "The Karath are losing cohesion." Jake contacted Amy and Lisa. "The nest ship is disabled. The Karath are disorganized. Now is the time to push back." Over the next several hours, the tide of battle shifted. The Valorian defenders, no longer facing coordinated assaults, began reclaiming territory. The Karath warriors, bred to follow orders from the nest ship, did not know how to function independently. They fell into confusion and disorder. 3 days later, the Valorian reinforcement fleet arrived. By then, most of the Karath had been eliminated or had retreated to their transport ships. The invasion was over. 2 million Valorian civilians had been saved. Jake stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the Valorian warships take up position in the system. He was exhausted. His body ached. He had not slept properly in over a week. But they had done it. Against impossible odds, they had succeeded. Commander Vaughn contacted him personally. "Human Jake, you and your people have done what our military could not. You saved these worlds. I am recommending you for the highest military honors our empire can give. I appreciate that, Commander. But right now, I just want to go home. Too. Then go with our thanks." And with our respect, Jake gathered his team. Miraculously, everyone had survived. They were bruised and battered, but alive. The journey back to the Valorian throne world took 2 days. During that time, Jake cleaned himself up, treated his injuries, and tried to prepare himself for what came next. Would the Queen keep her word? Would she really accept his marriage to Lyra? Or would she find some excuse to deny him? When the Defiant entered orbit around the throne world, Jake received a message. He was to report to the palace immediately. Alone. Amy squeezed his shoulder. "You did it, Jake. You earned this." Jake nodded, though he still felt nervous. He took a shuttle down to the planet and was escorted through the palace halls once again. This time, the guards who had looked at him with contempt before now showed something like respect. Word of what happened at Terran had spread quickly. The throne room doors opened, and Jake walked in. The room was less crowded than before. Only essential court members were present. Queen Vastara sat on her throne, her skin a calm blue color, but Jake barely noticed the queen. His eyes went to Lyra, who stood at the base of the steps holding Kale. She looked exhausted and worried, but when she saw Jake, her face lit up with joy. Jake wanted to run to her, but protocol demanded he address the queen first. He walked to the center of the room and stopped, looking up at Vastara. The queen stood slowly and descended the steps. When she reached Jake, she looked at him for a long moment. "You did it," she said simply. 2 million lives saved, 3 worlds protected, and the Karath invasion defeated by a handful of humans and some very unconventional tactics. "We had help," Jake said. "The Valorian defenders fought bravely once they understood how to fight smarter." "Modesty," the queen said. "Another human trait I am learning about." She paused. "I set you an impossible task, human. I fully expected you to fail. I wanted you to fail, but you proved me wrong." She turned to face the court. "I made a promise. If this human succeeded, I would accept his marriage to my daughter. I would legitimize his child, and I would welcome him into this family." Her skin shifted to a formal gold color. "I am a queen, but I am not a liar. A promise made before this court is binding." She looked back at Jake. "Jake Martinez, I recognize your marriage to Princess Lyra. I acknowledge your son KL as my grandchild and a legitimate heir to the Valorian throne. And I formally welcome you into House Vastara." The court erupted in whispers. Some sounded approving. Others sounded shocked. But none objected openly. The queen then did something Jake never expected. She descended to his level and extended her hand. Not in the gesture of a superior to an inferior, but in the gesture used between equals. "You have earned respect through your actions," she said quietly, so only Jake could hear. "Not just mine, but the respect of many in my empire. Use that wisely. Help my daughter reform the things that need changing. But do it carefully. Change too fast, and you will be destroyed by those who fear it." Jake took her hand. "I understand, Your Majesty, and thank you." The queen nodded, then gestured toward Lyra. "Go to your family." Jake turned and finally allowed himself to run to Lyra. She met him halfway, and they embraced fiercely. Kale, caught between them, made a small noise of protest, and they both laughed through their tears. "You came back," Lyra whispered. "I knew you would, but I was so afraid." "I promised," Jake said. "I keep my promises." They held each other for a long time, not caring that the entire court was watching. When they finally pulled apart, Jake looked down at his son. Kale had grown so much in just the 10 days Jake had been gone. His eyes were more alert, more curious. "Hey there, little one," Jake said softly. "Sorry I was away, but I am back now, and I am not leaving again." The queen cleared her throat. "There will be a formal ceremony in 3 days to officially recognize this union. For now, you are all dismissed." As the court began to disperse, several younger Valorian nobles approached Jake. They asked him questions about his tactics, about human culture, about how he thought. Some were curious, some were skeptical, but all of them were interested. Lyra smiled as she watched. "You have started something," she said to Jake. "You have shown them that there are other ways of thinking, other ways of solving problems." Jake, 1. That was not my goal, Jake admitted. "I just wanted to be with you and our son." "I know. But sometimes the most important changes come from people who were not trying to change the world. They were just trying to live their lives honestly." In the months that followed, Jake and Lyra became symbols of change in the Valorian Empire. Their son Kael grew strong and healthy, displaying traits from both his human and Valorian heritage. He was not as strong as a full Valorian, but he was more adaptable. He was not as clever as a full human in some ways, but he had the long lifespan of his mother's people. Queen Vastara, slowly and carefully, began allowing more flexibility in marriage laws. She did not remove all traditions, but she created exceptions for those who proved themselves worthy through service to the Empire. It was a small change, but it was a start. Jake continued his work as a diplomat, but now with far more influence. Other species began to see humans differently. They were not just the new, weak species anymore. They were survivors, innovators, problem solvers, and every night, Jake returned home to his wife and son. They would eat dinner together, talk about their days, and plan for the future. Sometimes Lyra's siblings would visit, curious about this human who had become part of their family. Sometimes human friends would stop by, amazed that Jake was now technically a prince. But through it all, Jake never forgot what mattered most. He had fought impossible odds, not for glory or recognition, but for love, for the chance to spend his life with someone who made him happy, for the chance to raise his son in a world where he could choose his own path. 5 years later, Jake sat in a garden on the palace grounds, watching Kael play. The boy was 5 now, running around with other young Valorians, and even a few human children. He was accepted by both cultures, neither fully one nor the other, but uniquely himself. Lyra sat beside Jake, her hand in his. Jake thought about it, then shook his head. "Not once. It was terrifying, and I was sure I would die several times. But it brought me here. To this moment. To you and Kael. How could I regret that?" "Some humans might," Lyra said. "An easier life maybe, but not a better one." Jake squeezed her hand. "I told your mother that humans are stubborn, that we endure, that we do not give up, even when we should. I was not just talking about combat or tactics. I was talking about this, about us, about refusing to give up on something worth fighting for." Kael ran up to them, his face flushed with excitement. "Father, I learned a new game. Do you want to play?" Jake smiled and stood up, letting his son pull him toward the other children. As he walked away, he heard Lyra laugh softly. In the distance, standing at a palace window, Queen Vastara watched the scene. Her skin showed a soft green color, the shade of contentment. She had been wrong about humans, she admitted to herself. Or at least, she had been wrong about this human. He had not conquered through strength. He had not demanded respect. He had simply been himself, honest and determined, and unwilling to bow to expectations. And somehow, that had changed everything. The queen turned away from the window and returned to her duties. But she carried with her a new understanding. Strength came in many forms, and sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe was not weapons or armies or ancient traditions. Sometimes, it was just a stubborn human who refused to give up on love.